Thanks for coming in today. We have your test results, and you're allergic to everything. Good luck out there. Hey, foodies and allergy warriors. Today we're going to deep dive into the wide world of allergens, the common ones, the uncommon ones. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do. Let's get to it. So, you are a food lover, and oh boy, you've just been diagnosed with a ton of food allergies. You weren't feeling great when you were eating certain foods, you really weren't sure why, and suddenly your doctor came back to you and told you, here's all the things that you're allergic to. And this is something that is not uncommon for people nowadays. We have a lot of allergens out there in our foods, and as somebody that's lived in different parts of the world, I've noticed that a lot of food allergies, sensitivities, in North America are things that you wouldn't necessarily see in other parts of the world, especially in other parts that I've lived in where, I would say when I was living in Denmark, oh, do you guys have peanut allergies here? And they kind of looked like, maybe. I said, well, what about gluten? And they're just kind of looking at their bread going, I don't think so. But how do we deal with food allergies? And the reason that this came up is so interesting. I got invited to dinner the other day to a lovely lady's house. It was part of a contest that I had won in a networking group that I used to be in. And she has a laundry list of allergies. I am not even kidding you. She has so many allergies. But the 5-course meal that she made us was outstanding. I am not even kidding you. Did I take any pictures of it? No, I enjoyed the whole thing and I did not take any pictures. It was just a lovely evening of socializing and talking and eating delicious foods. But it got me sort of thinking about allergens and how can we create foods not using particular ingredients and maintain taste, texture, that mouth feel that you're looking for. Like if you can't have gluten anymore, how do you make bread that isn't like a brick? How do you suddenly go from making a creamy Caesar salad dressing with eggs and Parmesan cheese and anchovies in it? Like there's 3 allergens right there: dairy, eggs, and fish. And make sort of an unctuous umami bomb of a Caesar salad. And so as I started thinking about this and I was eating and enjoying this meal, I thought this week let's kind of explore a little bit of our food allergens, but I also want to talk a little bit about some of the substitutions that we can actually do for those food allergens. Okay, I had to change my background a little bit. We had a little technical difficulty. Every week we have technical difficulties. It really makes it exciting for us here. But I want to go back a little bit. So, this is something that I haven't talked about before, and I actually don't usually mention to people. So, many, many years ago, I actually was trained as a raw food chef. So, raw, gluten free, vegan chef. So, what does that mean? It just meant that everything that we produced for the cafes that were across Canada, so there was 10 cafes, and I had a fancy title. I was director of culinary operations. I worked for a lunatic, though. Let's just be honest. I worked for an absolute, I'm not even kidding you, she was a crazy person. So I created menus, seasonal menus, and the criteria was to have everything fall under those categories, being gluten-free, raw, and vegan. So with raw, that just means instead of cooking, you would use a dehydrator, or you would use the Vitamix, or anything like that. And so it was really, I got to be super creative, and I got to create all these incredible menus. So I actually did get trained at a raw food academy, and I worked as a chef at a restaurant, and then I worked as the director position for a while. And throughout that time, I was able to really focus on creating items such as a Caesar salad dressing that didn't have dairy, eggs, and fish in it. And people would try it and they were shocked. They thought, this, what, how does this not have any of those things in it? So it was trial and error in some ways, but also I have that brain where I just know what goes together. I know some of you out there are like, really, Colleen, you have that brain? I do. I have that brain. I could look at ingredients and be like, okay, if it was this, this, and this. And I realized a couple years ago, I read a book by a chef and they talked about everything is proportions. And whenever I was creating items, it was always proportions, 2 to this, to 1 of that, to 3 of this, to 1 of that. And it was always in my brain just thinking about the proportions. So I did that for quite a while. And as I was researching the episode today, I realized that in 2016, I actually wrote an 18-page ebook. So it was called 7 Days of Superfoods. And in that ebook, I actually took a different superfood every day and created recipes and fun facts and little tidbits about the food. And I made sure that everything was easily accessible. So, the one day we had avocado and the one day we had chia seeds. And these things are not hard to get anymore. Like back 20 years ago, chia seeds would have been a bit more challenging to get. So every day I created a recipe. Every day we had a fun challenge. I was doing this on, I think, Facebook at the time. And what I did was I actually had this whole group of people that followed along for the 7 days. And we created stuff. And then I had them send their pictures in. And I posted the pictures of everything that they made. And when I was looking at the book today, I realized that the majority of the items in the 7 Days of Superfood ebook, which I'm actually going to update and put out there, but they were all amazing substitutions for people with different food allergies. So when we think about our common allergies, we think about dairy, fish, eggs, wheat, soy, mustard. Mustard is part of the regular common allergens now. And then we have our uncommon allergens, so things that there are allergens or sensitivities to that sometimes people, you go to the restaurant and somebody will be like, oh, I'm allergic to nightshades. And everybody at the table will be like the shade that goes over the lamp? Like what the heck is a nightshade? So if somebody says they're allergic to nightshades, what does that actually mean? Well, nightshades are tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplants, potatoes, hot peppers, paprika, goji berries, tomatillos. All of those fall into our nightshade categories. Now, what about if somebody says, oh, I have FODMAPs, FODMAPS? For many people, they'd be like, you what? You're allergic to what? Well, some of the foods that are under this category are things like artificial sweeteners that are made with sorbitol or mannitol, high fructose corn syrup, so monosaccharides, some honey, sometimes the fructose that's found in fruit, your disaccharides, so lactose, so you can't have dairy products, and also things like the oligosaccharides. So these are things like you'd find in legumes, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and my friend who made our 5-course dinner the other day, she's allergic to basically everything that I just said. So it's like, how the heck do you make stuff? And it can be a really big challenge. So what do we do with somebody that has allergens and has actual food allergies? Let's take a little interlude here. Think about if you were told you had an allergy to corn. What does that mean? Well, for most people, they'd be like, well, just don't eat, the tacos with the corn salsa or don't eat corn on the cob. It's not as simple as that. Corn has infiltrated almost all of our food, again, especially here in North America. Think about it. Corn starch, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. So when you're thinking about, oh, just don't eat corn, it's not that easy. Some of the common things that you actually will find corn in: baking powder, Cornstarch will be used as an anti-caking agent in baking powder. So now, well, what do I use when I'm baking when I can't use baking powder? Oh boy. Powdered sugar. Again, cornstarch will be used in it as an anti-caking agent. Canned soups and sauces. The next time you pull a can off the shelf, look and see if there is thickener in it, like cornstarch, or it might even have corn syrup in it. And that's another thing with our salad dressings. Sometimes they'll use the corn syrup to sweeten it, but there's so much more. Cereal, granola bars, deli meats, French fries that are frozen, processed snack foods, candies, chocolate bars, gluten-free products, and medications. Think about it. Sometimes they actually use cornstarch or corn oil, sometimes in like the little capsules. So if you're allergic to corn, it's not just as simple as, okay, I won't eat corn on the cob anymore. Cooking for people that have food allergen issues or food sensitivities can actually be very hard. And for some people, they actually struggle for years to find the proper substitutions. And I think that one of the challenges as somebody that creates recipes and somebody that works in the food industry is finding the texture and flavor that people are looking for. And it can be very hard. If you can't have cheese anymore, then how do you make that, cheese topping on the pizza? What do you do if you can't have eggs anymore and you want to bake things? So there's actually a lot of substitutions already out there that work great. So things like aquafaba, that is the chickpea water. So basically you get your can of chickpeas and that juice that's in there, you can use that to make things like meringues. You can use it for your macarons. You can use it in baking for egg substitution. And like I talked about in the episode last week, olive oil can actually be substituted for butter in a 1-to-1 ratio. There is, trial and error, but also the cost of it. Many producers, manufacturers of foods that are free from gluten, corn, eggs, dairy, etc., charge a premium. Now, I totally understand why they're charging a premium, but let's be honest, some of it tastes terrible. And when I think about all of the different foods that I have eaten, now I don't have any food allergens. I have food that I hate. Cantaloupe, I'm looking at you, the devil's food, but I don't have allergens, so I feel very lucky about this. Okay, no, let's back up here. I can't have dairy, just straight up dairy. So put a glass of milk in front of me and have me drink it. I'll be on the floor, fetal position. We're going to the hospital. Don't worry, you get to take yourself to the hospital now. They won't come get you in the ambulance. That's another story, though. But I can have any other dairy products. And so I was looking up, I was like, well, why can I have other dairy products when I can't have straight up milk? So some of it is the fat content of other products. Some of it is the way that it's been processed. Because I can eat my weight in butter. I'm not even kidding you. Butter is in the house. The butter is gone. I love the butter. I can have ice cream. I can have whipped cream. I can have all of those things. But straight up milk, I can't have. And when that actually changed was I was living in the United States, and their dairy is very different over there. They're allowed to use a lot more hormones in their cows than we use here in Canada. And I ended up developing a really bad, I don't think I would call it an allergy. I would call it a sensitivity to dairy. But when I got back to Canada, I was like, oh, I'll just start drinking organic milk again. Oh, no, no, no. No, 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 no. That did not go well for me. And I actually had something quite terrible happen, but we won't talk about that. But with the milk, I can't have it. So when I'm drinking my coffee now, I have delightful oat milk for coffee. And that's an easy substitution for me. I don't have to worry about it for anything like baking and stuff like that. So the impact on my life is very minimal. But for people that have a lot of food allergies, it can be very, very challenging. Just as a side note, I want to know who looked at the cow's udder and said, whatever's coming out of that, I'm drinking it. Because again, it's one of those food things where I always am so curious as to how did it become something that we as humans eat. I just never understand it. All right, so back when I was doing a lot of vegan baking and vegan cooking, I really spent quite a bit of time also trying to figure out, is there a good way to do vegan and gluten-free together? And it's actually quite a challenging combination to do because you can only take so many ingredients out before what you are making does not resemble the original product at all. But there are a few things that you can do that are really amazing substitutions. So I used to do vegan, gluten-free, raw cheesecakes. And you're probably like, what is that? But hear me out. For the cheesecake part, I would actually use cashews. And cashews, if you blend them up in the Vitamix, they become incredibly smooth and creamy. If you want to be extra, you actually ferment the cashews and turn it into cashew cheese. It's actually super easy. And then you get that tang like cheesecake. And I actually made a cheese board once all out of cashew cheese and fed it to my friend that works for a dairy farm. And he was blown away. He was like, there's no way this is not made with dairy. I'm like, none of this is made with dairy. So there are ways to do it. For the crust of the cheesecake, because I couldn't use any gluten, I used a combination of nuts and coconut oil and dates, and it was absolutely delicious. So there are certain things that are quite easy to change from one thing to the next. But there are other things where it is a big challenge when you suddenly have to take out all of these different items and now you've basically replaced everything. You have to think about, when somebody says, for example, I want to make this sugar free. Well, if the sugar is a 33% component, a third of your recipe, it's a lot of sugar, but say for argument's sake, what am I replacing that amount with? So for somebody that has a FODMAPs allergy, well, you can't just say, well, I'll just replace that sugar with sorbitol or mannitol, because that's not going to work for them. They'll have an allergic reaction. So sometimes things are really easy and sometimes they're really challenging. Okay, here's my second aside. You are told that you can't have wheat anymore. You're thinking, okay, I just won't eat bread anymore. Again, no, my friend, that is actually not going to work. Wheat is so prevalent in food, so many foods. You can find it in the craziest places. Salad dressings, they will put it in salad dressings. Imitation meats, things like processed snack foods. A lot of these will have those wheat components to them. Puddings, desserts, you'll have modified food starch in them, which is made from wheat. Imitation seafood, you have wheat gluten. One of the things that always amazes me, though, especially when I teach food safety, is I'll say, okay, if somebody is allergic to soy and wheat, can they have soy sauce? And for some unknown reason, people do not associate soy sauce with soy. And they also don't, for some reason, think that there's wheat in it, but there's both. So a quick and easy substitution, if you can't have soy sauce, is tamari. And tamari is actually one of those substitutions that is absolutely delicious. Bragg's amino acid is also another one if you cannot have soy sauce. So if you get told that you can't have wheat, oh my gosh, you're going to have to look for it in so many packaged and processed foods. If you eat packaged and processed foods, but also there are a few things that you can easily substitute that are actually pretty darn tasty. Okay, let's take just 2 seconds to talk about the fakers. So, working in the food industry, there are people, they're out there, and they will fake allergies. Now, this does nothing to help people that have actual food allergies at all, because it makes people that work in the restaurant industry extremely skeptical. So, the funniest food allergy, and I'm going to use air quotes for that, is we had a lady come into the restaurant one night and she said she was allergic to sauce. Friends, this is not an allergy. First of all, what kind of sauce? Any sauce? She just said sauce, not a food allergy. So I kind of giggled. I also, sometimes people be like, I'm allergic to coffee. Maybe you have a sensitivity to caffeine. I don't know that you're necessarily allergic to coffee. I have a surprising amount of people that will say, I'm allergic to chocolate. Again, I'm not saying that you're not allergic to chocolate, but the Mars bar and the Snickers bar that you're eating are not chocolate. They're a sugar bomb, and they have a chemical constituent in it that mimics chocolate, but the actual amount of chocolate in there is negligible. All right, so we talked a little bit about common allergens. We talked a little bit about some of those uncommon allergens, things like the nightshades, corn, stuff like that. How do we help our allergy friends? Well, the best thing to do is if you have somebody, say they're coming over for dinner, and you say, I'm really not sure how to make a meal for you, typically they are very happy to say, you know what, I could bring a dish. And then they'll bring something, and then you can ask them questions. Oh, what is it that you made here? Oh, this was actually really delicious. Could I get the recipe? And then the next time they come over, you've got a recipe in your back pocket that you can make and share with them. People with actual true allergies are typically so happy if you've made any effort to help them out. Now, if you're like, I made you carrots and olive oil to dip them in, this is not the greatest effort out there. You maybe do something a little bit more, but for somebody that does have food allergies, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start a new series. So I'm going to actually start putting out some videos about different ways that you can do food substitutions and find some really fun recipes. And what I'll do is I'll recreate the recipe, but with some of the food substitutions in it. That's my jam. I spent years, creating these menus, creating these challenges, and it was so interesting because, like I said, when I looked earlier, I have this 18-page ebook that's just sitting there. I'm going to update it. I'm going to get some better pictures in there. I'm going to get it out there because it was such an incredible resource. And, when you're told the initial shock of you're allergic to, A, B, C, D, all the way to Z, oh, that could be really shocking for people. And I even remember my mom did an allergy test and suddenly she couldn't have bananas and she couldn't have eggs. And she was just like, those are my main food groups. So sometimes sensitivities and allergies can develop later. But once you actually have an allergy, it's not like you're going to be not allergic to it. So typically, food sensitivities are quite common with people. But I thought it'd be really fun as we move forward to kind of work together. And the other thing, I'm going to put myself through this. I'm going to buy some of the packaged stuff from the store and I'm going to try it. So a couple of weeks ago when I was at my parents' place, I bought a brownie mix. That was a gluten-free brownie mix just because it looked like the recipe looked, or the ingredient list on the side of the box looked good. It was kind of like chalk that had sort of a little bit of chocolate in it, but it was terrible. So we're going to make something much better. I actually pulled up the old flour recipe that I used to use. So I used to make a gluten-free flour, and it's a combination of flour. So if you're like, Colleen, I can't wait for you to put episodes out, here is a pro tip. if you want to make a gluten-free flour for general baking, so this isn't going to be for doing bread, but if you're making like a cake or a brownie or a cookie, muffins, stuff like that, the recipe was actually a really great recipe, but it was a combination of different flours, rice flour, brown rice flour, sweet rice flour, and a few other ingredients. And so I'm going to start making some of those recipes, and then I'll actually put what the gluten-free flour recipe is into the show notes when we actually do those episodes. These are now ingredients that are easy to find. They used to be really hard. Now, I mean, you can literally go to your regular grocery store, and if they have like a natural food section, you're going to be able to find these ingredients. So we're going to go through and we're going to actually make some of these recipes just because for me, it's such a fun exercise, but also I think for people that potentially are feeling like, oh, I've got some food sensitivities and I don't know what to do, it's a helping hand because it can be really overwhelming. And if you start making recipes from some of these blogs that are out there, which they're making, some of them are making amazing stuff and some of them are making truly horrifyingly terrible food. And I think with people that have, these allergies and these sensitivities, they kind of just put up with it and take it because it's like, well, this is what I got now and there's nothing else for me out there, but there is so much more. So I'm going to help you guys to create some stuff. So we're actually going to start that as a whole playlist on this channel as well, because it's still about exploring food and it's still about, going down the rabbit hole of what can we use? What substitutions? And it's funny because as I was looking around my kitchen today, I realized that all of these things that I would use for substitution. So, say I couldn't use regular flour and maybe I was making a cookie recipe. Well, I have almond flour here and I have coconut flour here and I have buckwheat flour here. I have all of them here because I used to use them in all of my recipes. So, for me, I have all of these. I have gluten-free oats. So, they are oats that are certified gluten-free. And these are things that I've just picked up at the regular grocery store. I have chia seeds and flax seeds and hemp seeds and all of these items that can make, the chia seed egg and the flax seed egg, and they will actually make a really great substitution. So we're going to talk about all of those things. And if you have a food allergy or a sensitivity, or you know somebody that does, pop it down in the comments and I will come up with something for you and maybe some substitutions or some alternatives for things that you could potentially use. Like I said, I love doing this. It actually makes me really happy because I want everybody to have great food. I want everybody to have the opportunity to, enjoy the foods that they have loved, even if an ingredient doesn't love them. So with that, please share this episode with a friend. Again, anybody that you know that potentially has a food allergy, share it with them and get them subscribed to the page so that they can follow along with all the different things that we're going to be doing coming up. And have an incredible morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks, everybody.